Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined today with George Aldridge to give our review on Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which is Matthew Vaughn's sequel to the 2014 original Kingsman: The Secret Service. You've actually saw this at midnight screening last night. I got back a couple of hours ago from watching it. And Tate isn't seeing it until the weekend, but I think we kind of wanted to just get a review out for this one, didn't we, in all honesty? We were considering doing a review on the Secret Service, but with this one, we're probably going to be talking about the first one as well. And that's what I think we should kick off with. So, George, what did you think to the original Kingsman: The Secret Service?
One of my favourite spy films of all time, one of my favourite Matthew Vaughn films, one of the best films of 2000 and... Was it 14 or 15?
2014, it says on Wikipedia.
One of the best films of that year. It was stunning. It was a brilliant throwback to the old sort of spy movies that even makes jokes at it. And it had an interesting story with great new characters. Learning everything. Kingsman is a beautiful film. And I've been very excited for Kingsman 2 because obviously it was a comic. It's a Mark Miller. For anyone that doesn't know, Mark Miller is the comic writer. He wrote, I think, Kingsman 1 with Matthew Vaughn in a pub. They come up with the idea together. They have the deal, you'll do the film, I'll do the comic. And then everybody did Kingsman 2, so I never anticipated this film coming out. So it was a bit of a Game of Thrones moment where Kingsman 2 was coming out and not anyone knew anything was going to happen. Whereas before we knew the main things, but that kind of added to the fun and the build-up of it. But yeah, Kingsman 1, I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, and actually, I've got to correct myself on this one. You're right, it was 2015. It was released at like a film festival or something like that on December 2014, but was released theatrical for us January 2015. So you're right there. Yeah, I love Kingsman as well. The first time I saw it, I think I was trying to compare it too much to Kick-Ass because visually it reminded me very much of that. Obviously, still a Matthew Vaughn film. And having not been a massive fan of spy films growing up, I didn't really take to it as much. I still really enjoyed it. But the more times I've watched it, it just gets more fun and more fun each time. I watched it a couple of days ago in preparation for this one, and I still absolutely loved it. Loved all the gadgets, loved the world it created. Kind of getting that a lot with spy movies now, like John Wick and stuff. I love the world that it's set in. And based on trailers for Kingsman: The Golden Circle, that was one thing I was looking forward to seeing in this one. The plot for it, for anyone who doesn't know, is that when their headquarters are destroyed and the world is held hostage, the Kingsman journey leads them to discovery of an allied spy organization in the US. These two elite secret organizations must band together to defeat a common enemy. And that was pretty much the one thing that was drawing me to this new one, was these new characters in Jeff Bridges, Channing Tatum, Pedro Pascal. They all look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it, as a whole, it didn't feel like a sequel. It felt like a sort of crossover. Like, part of me thought that, well, obviously it didn't happen, but I would have wished that we'd have had an outright Kingsman 2 of British spies. And not to create the bastard cinematic universe, but I'd have loved to have seen the American spies in their own film first, because we were introduced to so many people while having to progress the story of the other guys into this bigger overlapping story of a new villain, which was fine. I mean, to me, it works and stuff, but there was a part of me, like even before this came out, that I loved the statesman idea and the concept of them, but I just wanted a bit more background. And I mean, we learned about the characters in like some really awesome ways, especially Pedro Pascal, but it didn't feel earned for the second film to be doing this. Like, if you look at the old Bond films, I know it's the biggest comparison, but the closest thing that I think was Thunderball, where they went to America. They had a couple of films before they went over to America and did the American stuff, and obviously they're the awful ones in the 70s where they kept going to America, but it was established by then. Whereas with this, I think they needed maybe one more film to at least establish the Kingsman, then go into something else. But as a whole, I did enjoy it, and I loved the American stuff, but I just thought it was too quick.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that, and it's difficult to talk about it without going into spoilers. The first section will be spoiler-free, by the way, for everyone watching, so don't worry about us giving anything away. But yeah, no, I kind of felt that, especially, I can't really talk about it, can I? There are a lot of plot threads that I wanted to see continued from the first one, and characters to continue and see them develop, which I don't think they really did to the best of their ability. It didn't really go in the direction I expected it to, and I think that's somewhat let it down. If we're going to go into sort of like our biggest positive and biggest negative before going into it, biggest positive for me is that all the new characters are great. Some of them probably don't get as much screen time as I'd hoped, or even as the trailers make it out to seem. But the ones that are new, like Julianne Moore, for example, Pedro Pascal, are all incredible. They just steal the limelight every single time they're on screen. My biggest negative is probably this one, like a lot of sequels, feels a lot of style over substance. And I know that the first Kingsman wasn't exactly the most like emotionally investing film, but it felt like this was having to tick all the boxes that the first film did and then up, crank it up to 11. So people love the church sequence from the first Kingsman film. So we've got to have loads of fast motion, high speed camera action scenes set to a popular song. We've got to do all these. You've got to have even more gadgets. We've got to do what we've got to up the ante, essentially. And it felt like it drew away from some aspects that I felt were there in the first film, but were missing in this one, especially with some like character emotional moments. So I think as a complete film, the first film is head and shoulders above this one. This one is kind of just an entertaining spy comic booky action film, and that's really it.
Yeah, I think as a whole, the first one is far superior in almost every way. And I think I said this last night when I finished it. I think it's a worthy sequel. It's not as good, but it's a worthy successor to it. And I've got this feeling if it hadn't been Matthew Vaughn, then it would have crumbled. I don't think anyone else could have took that on and done some of the stuff they did. But yeah, there was something missing from it, and not whether that does equate to the American Spies and you're losing your actual Kingsman and progressing the story arc of Eggsy properly, stuff like that. But my biggest positive is Julianne Moore as the villain. Every single scene she's in, it's dynamite. We've kind of said before we record, I think she was better than Samuel Jackson. You're different, and there's, I mean, with a spy film, the way I'm going to see it, and we'll talk about it a lot later on, you have the villain, the henchman, the gadgets, the spies, and the supporting people. And these are what these films are. They're just classic throwbacks to all of that, and I absolutely love the fact that they do that in this one again. But there are some things in this where they go way too far. There were some, in Kingsman 1, I'm struggling to think of a single awful scene. Whereas in this, you could lose 20 minutes of bad scenes easily. And I do like the film, but it's got its problems. And I just think that the concept, how can you top the chav becoming the spy in the first film and saving the world? Because that's your origin story set and done dusted. And with this, it's how are you going to progress him? Well, he's already progressed from chav to spy, so you've got to do something. But I didn't mind it, but there are some issues with it, and I feel that structure was a big part of it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of what Eggsy's character arc is in this film again without going into spoilers, and there kind of is one at the end, but it's nowhere near as big a progression as he made in the first one, which is kind of the problem that I think most middle chapters of films have. It's like, right, where do we take these characters now? He's kind of just he's hit his peak now in terms of his Spider in this one. Like, he can do everything. He's got all the gadgets. He's great at combat. He's great at everything. He's the classic gentleman spy at this point, and there's really nowhere else he can go after this. What did I want to bring up about this film? Yes, so the opening action scene, there's an opening car chase scene. I'll just leave it at that. And with most of Matthew Vaughn's films, the CGI in them, I don't know whether to call it crap CGI, but it looks noticeably fakey. It's stylized to be that way, though, so you can kind of let it slide. You really ragged on this film for its CGI, saying that it's everywhere in the film, and there is a lot more of it in this one than there is in the first film. But I really only had a problem with it in the first opening action scene. When you open with a scene like that, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the film, where it's going to go. And yes, you can probably watch it and say, oh, that character's not going to die. They probably won't kill off Eggsy. But there's got to be some kind of suspension of disbelief, and I just didn't have it in that opening scene. It was too over the top for me. I know the first one had some over the top scenes, like the church scene and the fight with Gazelle at the end, but that was really it, and it still felt in keeping with the tone. This jumped the shark for me at the opening.
Yeah, it was in the trailer, the car scene, and it looks questionable, but you didn't wonder if that was because of the trailer, but no, it finished. The CGI, there's some wonderful CGI in this. For example, there's some dogs, some of the villainous stuff, but the problem I had is that almost every single establishing shot of the location has CGI, and normally that's not a crime. When it's not even that it's blatant, it's that it's distracting, because it's in his other films there's been loads of CGI. Yeah, it's
like the Kingsman mansion in the first one was an actual location, wasn't it? I don't know. It looks like one I've seen.
It looked like films. One, and that was fine. And I think when they go to the mountains in the first one, there was CGI, and you could see they do obvious CGI, but with this, it was almost every single place they went to, and after a while, it just really started to like get on my nerves because there's some scenes that they really didn't need it. They kept doing it and doing it, and it's not just to harp on it, but I've got no issue with CG. But when it became that distracting, because you'd have moments where it's wonderful on the robot dogs, the CGI is outstanding on them, but then it's all these establishing shots. It just give me a headache, and it shouldn't do. But that's probably my biggest problem in the entire film, which is you couldn't look at. I mean, they go to Glastonbury and they CGI just hundreds of tenths, which is fine, but it was the worst scene in the film, but it looked like what are they on? Why can't they just stick a camera there for a couple of days?
Did you have a problem with the action scenes in it as well, like with the fast motion camera?
The opening, the car chase I did. The other scenes I was perfectly fine with. I think it always comes down to when they use more practical effects, because there was some great stuff in the car chase, but when he was flying through the doors and in the air and stuff, it was like really cartoonish.
I'll say it's still a great soundtrack though in those scenes. Like that's one thing I can't fault with it is the music, the score, and the actual soundtrack itself. Kicks off with a Prince song, that was cool. But yeah, I don't know what it was with the action scenes for me, because it is in the similar style. It is basically the same style as the first film, but it felt like, I don't know, maybe there was more CGI in this one, so it looked faker, so it took me out of it more. I don't really know why I had a disconnect with this one compared to the first one. It was strange. I guess we need to talk about Colin Firth, and that's not a spoiler because that was in every single trailer. I think it would have been best if they hadn't have included him at all in the trailer and let the audience have that reaction to it. I know that your family's walking around outside and they have yet to see the film, so you're probably going to have to go a bit quiet in a minute when you talk about spoilers. But do you think that Colin Firth was necessary in this film? Do you think it was needed for him to come back in this film?
I don't know, because I don't think anyone expected him to be as good as he was in that first film. So I'd read the first comic, and Harry was a fine character, but he was a very simplistic character, similar to Big Daddy. Obviously, also Mark Miller, also Matthew Vaughn. And Nicolas Cage came in and made Big Daddy his own, and that's precisely what Colin Firth did. Big Daddy had to die, which was great. The way he does it is perfect. They didn't need to bring him back. But with Colin Firth, even watching that first one, there was a massive part. It's like, you know what, like, I could dig it if they bring him back. It would be something cool for the future films or something. And because I don't think anyone expected Colin Firth to be that likable. Like, he seems like a fine guy, but you know, like your Love Actually is your all them. You know, you've got a King's Speech, you've got a Kingsman one, but he's got all them other ones in the middle, like Bridget Jones's Diary is all them. And I don't think anyone expected like how much they'd enjoy seeing him, that he could do action. So part of me was like, okay, I do want him back. And I'm happy that in the trailers they didn't reveal how, they just had him in them. So I've got to say, at least they weren't trying to hide it so they didn't get spoiled at a later point. But
yeah, the question really wasn't, is he back? It's how is he back? And that's really why you went to see it, to see how they bring him back. Yeah,
I didn't mind how they did it. I like his story arc in the film as well. We'll get to that. Some stereotypical, but with some nice dynamic changes on them as well. But I feel that for the character of Eggsy, I mean, he's great in it, again, as usual. But I think Eggsy they were due. You kind of one without the other in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm really torn on it, having watched it, because Colin Firth is great. You're right, he made that role his own in the first one. He did leave a big impression of it, and that's why it was hard-hitting in that first one where he died. I mean, and how he died in that film, it's pretty impossible to come back from, or so we thought. It seemed like to me it was that case of, it's a sequel, we need to bring him back because it's a sequel. And I don't really like what they did with him in this one. He didn't seem like he had the same spark as he did in the first one. And maybe that was intentional. Maybe that was the direction they were taking the character. I would have been fine. When it starts off with the film, again, I can't go too much in spoilers, but it's showing Eggsy dealing with his loss. Like, it still has a big effect on him. And I like that aspect of it.
And he lives in his house.
Yeah. And he has moments where he has flashbacks that we haven't seen before, around the same when he was training up with the Kingsman. And if you'd have just left it at that and just had like, maybe you could have done like a Rocky V moment where Eggsy sees like the ghost of Harry and talks to him or something like that. Maybe you could have done something like that. I think that would have worked better, and I think that would have had more of an emotional resonance from the first one. And in terms of Eggsy's character as well, having to deal with that loss, having to let go of him. And then based on when the entire Kingsman headquarters gets wiped out in this one, that could have been a continuation of having to move on. But it felt really kind of pandering, like the audience wants Colin Firth back because they liked him, so we need to try and hash out a way to bring him back. And in all honesty, I didn't like the way they brought him back. I know it's a spy movie and it's like a comedy spy movie, so you just have to kind of run with all the wacky ideas, but I just didn't buy it. I really didn't. And it kind of didn't take me out of the movie, but I was thinking that I would have insert another character, maybe move one of the statesmen over as that kind of Harry character, as the new mentor character or sidekick character, whatever you want to call it, and maybe have it as like Pedro Pascal or something, or even give Channing Tatum more to do. I don't know. I'm torn it because Colin Firth's great and his performance in this is good, but in terms of the narrative, I wish they'd have kind of just, like Big Daddy, just kept him to the first movie.
Oh, it's such a weird one. And the other thing, not to go into that Storm territory, is because there's not a second comic. We don't know. Did Mark Miller have that scene happen knowing in the future he could bring him back? Or did Matthew Vaughn have the idea? Or did both of them see, oh, shit, this happened. Should we bring him back? Because
I imagine they still collaborated on this one and came.
Oh, yeah, of course they did. Yeah, they're good. They've done a lot of films together. And, you know, that's the one issue is that because there wasn't any previous source material, you didn't know. Which made the intrigue nice as to how, but I'd say it did it a lot better than Sherlock season 3. I will say that.
God, yeah. We've talked about Julianne Moore's character. We'll probably talk more about her in spoilers. I guess we'll sort of like go to overall opinions now then and just jump straight into spoilers if you want. So would you recommend Kingsman, The Golden Circle?
Yeah, it's if you're going to the cinema to watch a spy film, especially a classic throwing back over the top comedy action scene, then yes, go for it. I think it's a worthy sequel. It's not as good, but at the end of the day, I didn't expect it to be as good given that there was so much going for that first film. Exactly, the Chav becoming the spy, that's such a unique concept, whereas in this it was to go to the Americans, which is fine. I enjoyed it. I'll always be seeing it again. Be interesting seeing it a second time around, knowing everything that's going to come, but it's a worthy sequel. I don't want to say it's disappointing, but it's not. But it didn't exceed expectations, and I didn't have the highest of expectations for it anyway, because I didn't think it needed a sequel.
No, I completely agree with that. To me, this was a perfectly serviceable sequel. It's everything I thought it would be from the trailers. If you want like a fun comedy action time at the cinema, like the spectacle, all the style over substance, that kind of thing, go and watch this one. If you like the first Kingsman, chances are you'll probably still kind of like this one as well. It's nowhere near as good as the first one, though. The first one is just a complete whole package of a movie that's just really fun to watch and just is emotional at some points. This one it's more just the action and the gadgets, really. It's fun seeing some of these characters come back, though, as well as the new ones, so it does have that going for it. And obviously the action itself, although it's a bit over the top, it still has that Matthew Vaughn stamp on it.
Oh, yeah, and as a whole, Matthew Vaughn is one of my favourite filmmakers. I've said for a while, I think there's a video last year where we said top 10 guys we want to do a Star Wars film. I had Matthew Vaughn on that list. I've seen all of his films except for Layer Cake, and he hasn't made a single bad film yet. He is a director. I mean, he turned down X-Men, Days of Future Past, to do Kingsman 1. So I think that says a lot about his career choices in terms of who picks the projects that he wants to do. And he's done a variety. So I didn't expect him to be back in this one because he wasn't back for Kick-Ass 2. But I'm very intrigued as to see if he will do a third one or will he go off and do something new. But he's a very, very underrated and talented director.
Yeah, I'd like to see him do something new, and this could be the last one, but it does leave it open enough to have a third one should he choose to come back. But I would like to see at least his next film to be something different. But that'll do it for our spoiler-free section on Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Moving to spoilers now, and we don't have a plan for this one, so it's pretty much just open field at the minute. Which area do you want to hit first on this one?
Colin Firth.
Colin Firth, okay. So they do the whole amnesia thing with him. The reveal was... Oh.
Well, no, sorry. No, they do amnesia first. Basically, should we just go through the situation at hand that they do a flashback to do 1 year earlier. They do obviously the classic church scene. And this is the bit I really did like where Halle Berry's their version of Q. She notices the sound waves, blah, blah, blah. She sends the spies over to go and investigate. They find his body outside, and they've got this insane like blow-up bed that wraps around your head with goo inside to fix your nervous system. at the end of the day, I don't care. It's a spy film. They're meant to have their mental gadgets. I kind of did that. There's quite a funny one. Their little top hat had all their medical kit, and that was really cool. Not top hat, their cowboy hat. Sorry, but I love seeing that there was, it wasn't just they stumbled across the body like they did, but there was purpose to it of being the American spies that they would naturally have to investigate the church stuff.
And it was still set in Kentucky as well. That's where the church was.
Yeah.
I kind of liked that, the connective tissue.
It was 10 miles away, wasn't it? I think it said.
Yeah. I liked how they did that in terms of the location. What I didn't like was the whole gadget thing. Like, it was literally like cling film over the head, like a bag, over this part of the head up. And then they fill it with this kind of gel, I think they say it was. Like, one with, like, was it nano machines, nano, whatever it was, nano something. It repairs the brain or like preserves it and then repairs all the tissue around it. It's basically just to get Colin Firth back. They just needed something completely out there to get him back. But they can essentially cheat death now, essentially.
Well, for head, they did say it was just for headshots. Yeah. Which does come in later with Pedro Pascal, which I thought was a nice throwback. Well, not throwback, but we'll get to it later. But then they do the amnesia trick where he's a butterfly scientist, and because in the trailers I've always been looking at the wall, but I've never even noticed what it was, and it turns out it's butterflies. And they call him the Butterfly Man. It's the obvious amnesia. At the end of the day, there's nothing else anyone can do for someone getting shot in the head because they're not going to wake up and be fine. They're not gonna, I don't think they're gonna.
They've already done the coma thing with him in the first movie, didn't they? Where he's like in there for a while and like grows a beard while he's in a coma. They've done all that already. I liked how Colin Firth played it though, because it's a completely different persona of Harry that he has, and I like that performance. And it's the classic trope where they're trying to repeat an incident from his former life that will trigger his memory again and get him back to the old Harry, which they do. They try the drowning thing from the first movie, and I actually like how he played that, because there's a moment where it looks like he's about to punch through the mirror, and then he freaks out again, and then he doesn't remember his arm.
You get a Casino Royale moment where like you think he's going to fly to one and drown, and they even did the same sound effect as the first Kingsman, where the water comes up and it's like a brum like noise and it rises. That was really cool seeing some of that. And then we got Mr. Pickle later on, which I loved. I'm a dog person, I don't care. Yeah. But if they're going to do a traumatic, one of my favorite lines in the first one is, I think, I didn't shoot my dog. No, what was it? It's like, I continued caring for Mr. Pickle for 11 years until he died of pancreatic cancer, and now I have to look at him every time I take a shit. Like, that's one of my favorite lines. And obviously I love the dog stuff, but it was... It was a nice way of doing it because it was the easy option, but the way that he played absolutely every scene as the guy that doesn't know anything, it was legitimate. Like, why would you put a gun to this? Why would you tell me to shoot my dog? And it was awesome the way they did it. But I think amnesia's the easy trick, but what I liked they did is that he didn't come back straight away with all his gun senses, which led on to one of my favorite scenes in the bar later on, where you think they're going to repeat precisely the first film, and they don't. They do it differently with someone else, which is a really cool way of doing it, but at least it sets up a character arc for Harry, that he's got to get his skills back, which obviously he would do by the end of the film, but I got behind the way they did it because they at least made it continue and progress throughout the film till the very end.
Yeah, no, I like that too. Speaking of dogs, there is a dog mortality in this, not just robot dogs, but an actual dog. JB, the pug from the first movie, doesn't make it in this movie. And that was a big thing with me. Like, obviously we knew the headquarters was getting destroyed, but we didn't realize to what extent, how many were going to die in there. And essentially they kill... Well, we have a new Michael Caine character in the form of Michael Gambon in this
Dumbledore.
Dumbledore, yes.
Dumbledore replaced Alfred. Who's next? Scar?
I would love Jeremy Irons in this series. He'd be right at home in Kingsman. No, I didn't expect to see Gambon there. Sorry, Dumbledore. So that was cool seeing him, although he's not in it all that much. But the biggest problem I had with it was you need to get Eggsy to that emotional point where it's like the all hope is lost moments in more or less every single movie. But they kill Roxy and the dog. They John Wick the dog, and then they kill a character who I had really high hopes for of seeing develop more. I really liked Roxy in the first movie, but I felt like she kind of got sidelined and didn't get all that much to do. She essentially does the whole like space thing. She goes into the atmosphere and fires a missile, and that's it. She's essentially just stands outside the movie as Eggsy goes in, does all the gunfighting and everything like that. And then she kind of does like a bit of sort of what would you call it, like Google searching or whatever it is, spy searching on the laptop, and then essentially gets blown up, and that's her out of the movie. And we can't even mourn a loss. Like, there's a moment where Mark Strong says, like, there'll be a point. Oh no, they do get drunk, don't they, and cry about them. So I guess there is that. But it didn't. That was more a humorous moment. It didn't feel like we had that emotional connection to it, because essentially when you come back to a sequel, although you do have the first movie laid out there and that attachment to the character, you kind of need to build it up a little bit again in the second movie to kind of get reacquainted with them. And I just don't felt like we had that at all. She didn't really get enough time.
No, and part of me thought, because she was in one shot in one of 3 trailers, and I kind of, when you know the killing, I was like, she's going to go actually, like, there's a reason she's not in marketing. And it's a shame, because, you know, you like the character arc in the first film, and to be gone like that, and because she hasn't been in it enough, you don't get that emotional sort of death with it. So, for example, go back to The Dark Knight, because you had the entirety of Rachel in the first half, the second one, Rachel, when she dies, that's a big moment, and they make it a moment, and the story progresses from that. Whereas this, it was just like, they're all dead, plus Roxy, plus the dog. Are you a villain too? And that's literally how the conversation goes. And, you know, that's what I said. I feel this film, it didn't earn.
Yeah.
It needed a film or 2 more to reach the point of destroying the organization, and that, because it didn't. I would have liked to have seen a more suave spy film. I think as a whole, that it worked, but it needed a film or 2 more to get to the point of a crossover, to get to the point of the Doomsday Article, whatever they called it. It needed some more, and they hadn't. Whether they struggled with her in the first film, they wanted to get rid, whether it was their choice intentionally or schedules, whatever. But, you know, but then they kept the princess in.
Yeah, because in the first movie with Roxy, it's like, will they get together or are they just friends? And it seemed like they were building more towards that, and then they kind of don't. I liked that the Swedish princess was in there.
It was a really nice little. When they come out, I can't miss this. Then you think it's with his mom or something, and he comes through. It's like the Swedish princess from the first one, and okay, like, it's kind of cool they are together and stuff, even though she's royalty. But at least they make some good scenes out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They digress too much later on in the film into their relationship. That's one of the things that turned me off, which they could have cut, especially that weird Glastonbury stuff.
Yeah,
that was awful. But it's such a weird one. I fucking love this film, but I didn't care for Eggsy's personal story, even though he's the protagonist. I cared for the actual plot of the film, and I cared for Harry, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
that you shouldn't have to, like, even with the first one, you had the subplot of Eggsy that, you know, he had his younger brother, he had the mom, and the abusive stepfather. You cared about them subplots tying into the main one, but you didn't care about Eggsy's subplots in this, even with his chav mates. You didn't care about them, but you cared about the Kingsman stuff. You should have cared for all of them. Well, that's just me, but I don't think it will be.
And I couldn't remember if I know there was that one guy from This Is England and from that first episode of Game of Thrones. He's got the really defining face. That's all I can describe him as. But I couldn't recognize if they were the same mates that he had from the first one when he was at the bar when he nicked that guy's car in the first film.
I honestly couldn't. I mean, I saw Kingsman one on Saturday, but I couldn't pinpoint the mates because I didn't care for them. And in this, like, they kill one of them. Like, that would have meant something. I mean, if they'd have put his mom with the dog and killed them, that would have been massive. Or even the Swedish princess. But no, it was his chav mate who you don't care about, who you're not going to see again.
I was actually really disappointed that the mum wasn't. I can't say that she wasn't in it. You get like a quick shot of her at the end once the Swedish princess and Eggsy get married, and it was nice seeing her there. But I would have liked to see with her, especially because that was one of the biggest sort of like emotional parts of the first one. She did have kind of her own story in that when what was it? Valentine had that transmission that was going out, and she was doing like the Jack Torrance with the meat cleaver through the door to kill the daughter. Like, that was a storyline. That was like a little mini storyline that you were kind of invested in. And as well as Eggsy trying to like prove himself a man to take care of his mom, that was nice. And we didn't really get any of it in this one. Going back to the Swedish princess, though, apparently, and you mentioned this before we hit record, apparently dogs are expendable in this movie. Dog isn't even like fresh in the ground, and she buys another dog as a replacement, exactly the same kind of dog. And she says, like, I know this won't replace JB, but here I bought you a dog to replace JB.
And it's the same dog in real life as well.
Yeah.
What was the point?
Yeah. And he kind of goes like, oh, I love him, which I guess you kind of would, but I think that would still feel a bit fresh, especially because JB wasn't any ordinary dog. He got this dog as a puppy. He went through training with him, everything like that. He made a bond with it. It's a really little nitpick there. What else can we talk about with this movie? I guess we could talk about Julianne Moore a little bit more.
Yes. So, how do you top a villain that had a lisp, dressed like a child, and wanted to kill all of the world except the rich people? You get a psychotic CEO who has her own little version of Joker's Funland from the Arkham films, but she's obsessed with 50s America. And you introduced to her by her getting a new recruit to turn a guy into mincemeat, cook him, and feed him to him.
Yeah, Alfie Allen's dad, Keith Allen, as a cameo.
You know, I guess losing limbs runs in the Allen family on these films. I loved her. She was mental. Part of me was thinking back to Hunger Games, where she's craving power in that as well, because she's in Hunger Games, and you thought she's 100 times better in this. Obviously, completely different films, but that blockbuster role, like, you could tell she's having the time of her life filming this. But every single scene with her, the attention to detail of the sets with her, everything, it felt like the improved villain for that feature film.
Yeah.
Whereas, because Samuel Jackson was great, he was absolutely amazing, but I thought there was just more going to her. She didn't have the better henchman, I will say that. That still goes to Giselle. I don't think they'll ever top that as a henchman, to be fair. But her story, her overall plan as well was actually it was a bit different. I mean, it's common to have all the drugs and all that sort of stuff, but when you get the business angle added to it and what she wanted to do, she wanted to be known. Like, I loved it, and that's what really made that sequel the story arc of her, because you cared for that story arc.
Yeah, I mean, she's essentially the villain that has everything but has nothing. Like, no one knows her name. She makes all these millions, probably billions of dollars in the drug market, and she doesn't get a notice. I love how she played it as well. She felt like it was like 50s housewife kind of thing, where you see them like in the apron with like the pin-up girls or whatever it is, like with the with like a pie or something like that kind of art, which reminded me of that. Although I guess the equivalent of this is hamburgers in this one, made of human flesh. She was completely off the rails and insane, and I love that about her. Throughout the middle of the film, it felt like they kind of dropped her a little bit. I would have maybe liked a few more scenes with her, and I don't know if that's a negative, because like you can have a character that doesn't appear in a film much, but their scenes are great, and you kind of, they leave you hungry for more.
That's
so
what
maybe it's
I got with her.
Yeah. And I don't know if we'd have had even more of her if it would have took the shine away off a bit of her, and she would have got a bit annoying. I don't know. But no, I really liked her. I love the world. I wanted to see more of the world. Like, we see the salon with the creepy robot that tries to kill people. And we see the diner, essentially. And I think they're the only rooms we
get the cinema with Elton John on stage, which was just fucking hilarious. There's currently a Snapchat Elton John filter from this Elton John Snapchat filter promoting this. It was just that's the thing. Like I said, comparing Samuel Jackson, because I'm going to compare them. So when you watch a spy film, one of the reasons you go is always for the villain. Look at Bond. You got Goldfinger, and he had Oddjob. You had Le Chiffre, who was his own kind of thing, I guess. It's always been about the villains are as memorable as the spies.
I think in Kingsman 1 they say something like that, don't they? In that exchange with
the super serious spy. Yeah, and that's the point. In the first one, they're making jokes about, this is the bit where the villain tells you their plan and they're going to do this. I ain't going to tell you that, and shoots him in the head. Whereas in this, she tells the whole world her plan, and it does come back to haunt her. But it's just such a random thing, like a villain obsessed with 50s America. It's that villainous trait that's so bizarre, but it's wonderful, and it makes the film. Especially whenever they show this village, you're going to get a big finale there, and when you get to that finale, it pays off with all of them. But it just felt right for this film. The not too serious, fun spy film that's a throwback to the old ones. She just suited it so well.
You mentioned the henchman there, so I guess we can say now in spoilers that the henchman is, oh god, I forgot his name. He was the preppy, upper class Oxford, Cambridge guy from the first one who had that rivalry with Eggsy. I didn't expect to see him back. I kind of like how. Okay, I like that they brought him back. The way they bring him back is kind of like Colin Firth, and it's a bit convoluted, and you just have to kind of switch off your brain and just run with it. But you're right, he's not as good as Gazelle. And I don't know why. I mean, he's got like the cool robotic arm. I don't know if it feels like a bit been there, done that, or if the character's just not interesting enough.
No, but it's just because, you've seen people with one limb before. Have you ever seen someone with fucking swords for legs? Like Giselle, and it was also the fact that she was a henchman. She wasn't tied into the character in the previous film. She was just there to kill people with Valentine. and she was fucking amazing.
There was a different fighting style as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Whereas
this was more like rough
into...
and fist. Whereas she was, I mean, her opening scene is when she split Commodore Norrington in half in the first film. In this, he gets battered by Eggsy in the first fight, and he loses every fight with Eggsy. So you don't feel there's any threat. Whereas Giselle, she's been built and built and built throughout that first one up to their battle at the end. So, you know, the henchman wasn't as good, but, you know, I kind of dug it. But I liked the fact they brought him back, because as soon as he comes screen, I was like, wait, his head got popped off in the first film, because he should have. But they went only about 30 seconds out of their way. But you got one of the best laughs of the film with Eggsy's impression of Mark Strong.
Yes, yeah.
But I didn't mind him, but he suited it as well, what they were going for, you know, the ludicrous hand. But the hand wasn't the best gadget. That goes to Pedro Pascal.
Yes, we'll talk about Pedro Pascal and a few of the Statesmen now. We'll come back to Mark Strong, though, at the end, because there's definitely one major bit of this film we need to talk about. For me, Pedro Pascal was probably the standout of this film. All the trailers, his fighting style, everything, his revolvers, how he like spins it on his finger and it's just shooting the gun. The lasso, the laser lasso, everything looked great about this character, and he really was. And at the end of the film, he essentially is the final boss. I wouldn't go so far as to call him an antagonist, though, because he definitely does have his own past. He has his own agenda of what he wants to, and you do see his side to it. The fight does get a little bit mired in the shaky cam style. I wish they'd have reined back a little bit for that final fight. But just in terms of every single shot that he's in, every single scene, even the Glastonbury stuff, which is probably, we both agree, is the worst part of this film, he was still great in it, though. His character, his persona.
He's literally Oberyn Martell, like, just as a spy.
Cowboy like Oberyn Martell.
Yeah, even when, like, he's still trying to get on girls, like, he's Oberyn Martell. Even though he's got the American accent, not the Spanish, he sounds the same. That sounds awful. Like, obviously it's the same actor, but the accent is so thick, it sounds Spanish, and the Spanish one was so Spanish, it sounded it, and it was just amazing seeing him. And even his fucking fighting scenes were amazing still. Like, if you love Game of Thrones, you're going to love this, because obviously it's Oberyn, but, you know, you thought, okay, he's going to be the cool guy, like, he's Agent Whiskey, and obviously with the whole America stuff, it was that. And then when we get to the first bit of that, okay, he gets shot in the head by Harry, who thinks he's a bad guy. He thinks he's undercover, whereas it's more personal. He's not working with the enemy at all. He's just doing it for himself. You get a brilliant moment where he comes back and they have to do their thing where they trigger their memory. So he's obviously been shot before because he says, I'm sorry, I'm going to do this. But he's this arrogant little twat like, hey, I'm Jack, I'm this. Do you want to come play with me for a couple of hours? Blah, 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 blah. Shows him a picture of his wife. And then that's one of the most powerful scenes of the film, because you kind of get their whole life inside 30 seconds and her death and everything. And you think, okay, that's just been said for the hell of it. And then when you get to the final scene, it explains, you know, she was caught in the crossfire between two junkies, and I'm not going to let any junkies in the world live, blah, 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 because of what happened. You know, yes, he's a villain, but he wasn't the undercover spy. It was his own trip. He was just the third party that wanted to be involved in that final situation. That made it far more compelling, that his twist wasn't for a typical plot sake. It was actually for his own. But his fight scenes were amazing as well.
Yeah, the laser lasso. In the trailer, it shows like it about to wrap around someone, and I don't know if it was you or Tate said like, we know how that's going to end. It's going to slice the guy in half, and it absolutely does.
He Darth Mauled him, like literally, like point blank. The best scene I think he does is the bar scene, because we get Harry who does the man is maketh man. There's a brilliant moment where they do it in a shot for shot. He smacks the beer glass and it goes like a couple of foot wide. And then, you know, they've got the classic British music, and then a whip just comes in, and in comes like the American, like sort of bar music. And he just has an amazing fight scene where he's like, you know, he's throwing chairs at people, whipping them, putting them out of doors. And it's a scene that like could have been very cheesy, but I think everyone loved it. And it suited the Kingsman world, his character. He really fit in well with them. And, you know, that's why I said earlier, I'd have loved to have seen not like a prequel, like a cinematic universe, but there's so much they could have done with the Americans as a separate entity. Like, obviously, I'm not saying do a cinematic universe. I despise that concept.
Kick-Ass has the separate Hit Girl comic, doesn't it? And she has her own story running parallel to it. I know they never did that in a film, but
yeah, she had a Hit Girl prelude to Kick-Ass 3 and, well, the comics books. But these guys, like the Statesmen, were brand new and they were awesome, but you didn't get enough of them. And, you know, Channing Tatum, I think it was kind of clever that the entirety of the marketing done around Channing Tatum, and he was actually not in it at all. He had the cool scene, like he had the spitting tobacco, which was basically like super glue bomb thing. But that was almost a little cool thing in itself. That wait, he's not actually going to be in it, which is all going to be Oberyn Martell.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved that about it. And I thought just him going around with him was great fun. Just seeing how he interacted with them, how he played with them, I loved him.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking on Wikipedia here. Elton John is actually billed above both Jeff Bridges and Channing Tatum in this movie, which is actually they probably have about the same amount of screen time in all honesty. Yeah, no, I love Channing Tatum in this. I've always said that now he's sort of like found his niche for which comedy films he does. I know he does serious stuff as well. Was it Foxcatcher he did with Steve Carell? But no, I like his comedies now, and I wanted to see more of his character. We get this awesome introduction to him, and we see this kind of intimidating way that he goes about interrogating people, and then he just gets hit with a drug in the film, which essentially paralyzes you throughout the entire movie, and then he's just put on ice, literally put on ice, and that's it. But they set up where he might come back for the third one, be involved with the Kingsman, which I'd like to see, but in terms of it wasn't enough for me.
My question, we'll do it now. We'll do Mark Strong in the end, but the way the film finishes is that Eggsy marries the Swedish princess. Then we cut to London. Kingsman's been rebuilt, and out steps the car is Channing Tatum in the Kingsman gear, not Eggsy. Now, there's a part of me that's scared that Eggsy being the. I think Eggsy would be back, but there was that little murmur of me that was scared. Like, I hope they haven't just replaced Eggsy, like they've just got rid of him. I don't think they will do, but I feel that they got Channing Tatum in, knowing that your story arc in this is that you'll lead into doing spy stuff in the next one. And I think that could be really cool because even with the bowler hat he had, I think he'd be an awesome spy. And seeing him working well off, I think him and Eggsy had good scenes together, and I think they could work well off each other in the next one. Mm-hmm. But it was a really cool way in which it was done. But yeah, I just got a bit scared when I thought it'd be Eggsy stepping out the car, but it wasn't, and that was a nice surprise.
I didn't even think about that for a third one. I'm hoping it's kind of like an exchange agent kind of thing. Like,
yeah, they're just helping each other.
We get to the third one and you get 3 people thrown into the mix. I don't know if that'll work, but I don't see them getting rid of the dynamic that Colin Firth and Taron Egerton.
No, I think if Colin Firth Arthur, which would naturally be the best choice, although we need new Merlin now. Channing Tatum could do really well, and he's like what you said. When we were younger, like 5-6 years ago, well, no, sorry, about 10 years ago. Oh God, Channing Tatum, Step Up 2. Them rom-coms, Dear John. Whereas now, like, we've had Jump Street, we've had Foxcatcher, we've had him being very likable in films, and I want to see more of him because he's starting to show his acting chops, and he is well suited for stuff like this, and he's very likable, and he has good chemistry with everyone.
Yeah. Who else? Jeff Bridges isn't really. Jeff Bridges plays Jeff Bridges in this movie, essentially. Halle Berry. I thought they'd do more with her. She's kind of like the female Merlin.
She had more screen time than I thought she'd get.
They kind of I thought they were setting up for bigger things at the end, and she talks about that she really wants to be an agent, she wants to get into the field, she wants to get stuck in, and they won't let her. And then at the end they just kind of go, oh yeah, you can be a part of it now. But there wasn't really enough to her character for me to get invested in her. They initially set up something between her and Merlin. I didn't know if that would go somewhere. We need to talk about Merlin though. Mark Strong. Mark Strong is one of my favorite actors. Even if he's in a bad movie, he tends to always be the best thing about it. He's a really diverse actor and he needs to do more stuff. And Merlin was one of my favorite characters in the first one, and he is probably one of my favorites in this. He gets the most emotional moment in this film. It genuinely almost got me. It was really nice. He does this reprise of Country Road, Take Me Home. And they kill him off. I didn't expect they kill him off because he's such a major character. He's such an integral part of that dynamic of the group. And the way they kill him off, like, he goes out a hero, but it's really kind of like an unfortunate accident way. It's not like this big grandiose way.
Yeah, he spends that part of the film like, don't you just wish that we could go out doing, their thing, and he gets suited and booted, he's all in.
I should have called it then. As soon as he said that, I should have clocked on that he was going to die.
Yeah, well, I didn't think he would. He's all suited as like, oh, this is Max Strong. Like, we've seen what he's like in Kick-Ass. We've seen him being the fucking badass in so many films. He can do it with his eyes shut, and he's so likable. And then, like, Eggsy steps on the landmine, he's back to being Merlin. And I thought he was just going to hold his foot on the mine for the entirety of the film. Like, as almost like a running gag. Even when he was singing and he just punches that guy, I thought it'd be a running gag, but no, he goes out on a note.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, and well, yeah, literally. But I was gutted because I love Mark Strong, and he's in almost every Mark. He's been in almost every Matthew Vaughn film as well. Maybe all of them. If he's in A Cake, I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't seen Stardust, but you said he was in that. Yeah,
He's absolutely amazing in Stardust. He's great in it. You know, even one of the best moments is when he says, "You know, this is protocol. We've got to. There's you and do not shed a tear until you are in a personal place after the event has ended." Then just cuts to him like absolutely like bawling in himself. Like he's so funny. He's got such charisma with everyone. You know, I didn't think he'd go. Like, how often do they kill the quartermaster? Never. They always go for the main guys like you Colin Firth. But I thought Colin Firth would die in this one. Yeah, it would just go full circle. He's he ain't going to come back again.
They can't do it again. They can't do it a second time.
And they can't bring Merlin back. He stepped on a fucking landmine and got blown into 1,000 pieces.
I just love how we've had a comment saying, "Is this the spoiler-free section?" Sorry, you came in at the wrong time. I don't. Is there anything else we can say? I think we've pretty much done a clean sweep of this movie now. Nothing else.
Favorite scene?
Favorite scene? It probably would be the Mark Strong moment. In all honesty, if I'm going with action scene, then it would be the bar fight with Pedro Pascal, his first one. Yeah, it would be the Mark Strong scene. I thought that it just hit everything for me. It had the emotion behind it. His character going out on a high.
Yeah, I think Mark Strong's the best sort of emotional moment. My favourite scene is probably every scene of Pedro Pascal. Even when he's got the magnums, he's in the snow. Like they've deliberately put him in that tight blue just so he stands out for the camera shots and stuff. I absolutely adored how he was in it. Even he's got his own little plane and it says Agent Whiskey on it.
It reminds me of like Top Gun or something.
Yeah,
Team America with the helmet
as well.
Yeah,
I thought everything he was in was great. And another favourite scene was probably, well, yeah, it's got to be Mark Strong, hasn't it? Yeah, it was. See, it was as a whole with Kingsman 2. It was good fun. It's a worthy sequel, but it could have been more, and I wish it had have been more. But at the end of the day, the good far outweighs the bad, and you know, it's more just that stupid side story with Glastonbury, the boyfriend, the ex, and that stuff. That was irrelevant. The less you speak about it, the better. But it could have been 20 minutes short, and that would have really helped out, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say as well the ski resort thing. I was expecting a ski scene, a la On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
We got the American sort of parachute coming out. We did get an amazing moment though, but I think the biggest laugh came from they're going down a slope. They're about to kill the retired people. It's like a Family Guy sketch, isn't it? All the old people are lying out in the sun, and then they stop just before it. I think you just get some more burger. That's the best shit I've done in 3 weeks. Like people would just piss themselves. That was a great scene, but it's like a Matthew Vaughn film. The action scenes are always excellent.
Yeah.
The way he does, even sometimes if the shake hand can be annoying, the way he shoots action, that he's not afraid to, show a bit of violence as well. That always does help. That he ain't going to tame it for anyone. Even back in X-Men First Class, that's 12/8. It's still got pretty brutal scenes of Magneto in it.
And with the coin going through
the head, stabbing the hands in the bar, shooting them point blank range. I loved it, and I can't wait to see what he does next. If he does Kingsman, I'll be buzzing for Kingsman 3. But if he wants to do something else, then I'm going to be buzzing to see that as well. Because he was originally famously in Talks Episode 7. I don't know many people that know like how far them talks went, what was said and what wasn't. But if he's been on a guy that's been on a radar of a lot of blockbusters, I think he's got a lot more to give. Yeah,
I agree. For me, I didn't hate this movie, but I am kind of apathetic towards it. It was an easy watch. It was a fun watch, but I don't know whether I'd go back to it again, whereas Kingsman 1, I absolutely will go back to that movie again. It's fine. It's more style in this one. It seems to just hit the beats of the first one more, but just ramp it up a bit more, and it doesn't feel as complete or as solid as the first movie. But if you just look at it at its own merits, it's a fun spy comedy movie. Tad too long, cut out about 10 to 20. I think that would have helped the film. but it was fine. It was basically as I expected it to be as a sequel. But that'll do it for our review on Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. Did you like it better than the first one? What were some of your favorite scenes? Anything Kingsman related, please do drop us a comment. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, tomorrow we'll be going live for the news. However, that will hopefully just be me and Tate. Hopefully I won't be doing another solo one on that one. And on Friday, I'll be getting back to some reactions. I've got reactions for Jumanji 2, Trailer 2, Tomb Raider. I was going to call it Lara Croft Tomb Raider then. And The Punisher, the new Netflix series. So look out for those on Friday. And I think this is our movie review for the week. I don't think we've got anything else coming out this week of September.
Not that I know of. This was my big September film.
Yeah.
Maybe something irrelevant's coming out. We don't know. But we're going to be drying. We're not drying up on the reviews, but we're sort of finishing the blockbuster season now. Everything's slowing down. And then soon we'll begin the journey to Oscar season. Hooray for bait films. And
in those slow moments, we have got an idea for a new show that we're still in talks about, so look out for that. Comment, subscribe, find all the social media links in the description down below. That'll do it from us, and until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.